Chicago's NBC5. This is NBC5 News at 10.
Yep.
Tonight, an investigation underway into the deadly Loop fire, but more questions than answers at this hour.
That's true. NBC5's Don Lemon now joins us with what went wrong.
Number one, Warner and Allison, what went wrong? There were no sprinklers in the upper part of that building, despite a 1999 Chicago High-Rise Safety Commission. And listen very closely. Por favor, salgan del edificio. What did I just say? I said, please leave the building in Spanish. Imagine having to depend on that for your life when you can't understand English. Well, many people in the building did not understand English, and it could have cost them their lives.
Okay, did you lose someone?
She came expecting the worst.
My mom, she's at the hospital right now. I'm going to try to get
How's
her
she
as soon
doing?
as
Where
possible.
was she?
I have no idea.
Now overwhelmed that her mom is still alive, she worked in the building with the cleaning crew, and like many who survived the high-rise fire, spoke Spanish and Polish, and little English, if any.
We both told go outside because it's fire.
People who work in the building say because the evacuation announcement was in English, many of them could not understand it, didn't know to leave.
I suspect the injured people are probably going to be from the cleaning crew.
The instructions in most buildings bilingual, or are they just in English?
They're just in English, basically. They make a great effort to get the Spanish language involved, but I'm not sure about the Eastern European languages.
But Tom Leah from the Northern Illinois Sprinkler Board says the biggest hindrance, no sprinklers in the building's upper floor.
So there's only sprinklers in the basement and the concourse level of the building, but that's still disturbing to me because there's not sprinklers in the high-rise part of the building.
Leah says Chicago high-rises built before 1975 are exempt from an ordinance requiring fire sprinklers. But in 1999, the Chicago High-Rise Commission formed and developed a report recommending high-rises be retrofitted, a 20-year phase-in for fire sprinklers. However, he says that report was never acted upon.
There's an issue.
Well, a new state life safety code went into effect on January 1st, 2001. It requires buildings like gas stations, nursing homes, and nurseries to have fire sprinklers. Now, Leah says that code should also include buildings over 85 feet tall, like today's high-rise.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don. We'll come.
This is ABC 7 News at 10, Chicago's #1 news.
Thick black smoke and flame shot from that Loop high-rise for nearly an hour. And it turns out the 35-story building does not have a sprinkler system. ABC 7's John Garcia tonight looking into how that is possible and if there was a building evacuation plan in place. John?
Kathy, may very well have been grandfathered in. This building is 37 years old and was not ever equipped with sprinklers. But the fact that all of the victims were found in the stairwells as they were apparently trying to escape raises a number of questions, not only about the sprinklers, but about the evacuation plan itself, both of which could very well have saved lives. As smoke poured from the building, then flames, firefighters worked to get into position to attack. But as precious minutes passed, the fire spread, while firefighters had to haul equipment up at least 10 flights of stairs. All that could have possibly been avoided if the building had been equipped with a sprinkler system.
The fire would have been out probably within a minute or 2 minutes. The fire department would still get there to check to make sure that the fire was out. They'd turn the water off. They'd mop up any water that was there. The tenants are back in. No problems.
It is possible to install sprinklers in an older building like this one without disrupting daily business, but it is expensive, which may be why it has not yet been done.
The city in a pre-1975 ordinance did not require fire sprinklers. After that, they did. And then just recently, the state fire marshal passed a law in January 2002 that required high-rises to be retrofit with fire sprinklers. However, neither the state fire marshal nor the city has acted upon that.
The building is also supposed to have an evacuation plan. A city ordinance says every high-rise building shall have a plan in place. The owner shall be responsible for creating, implementing, maintaining, and updating a plan for that building. The owner shall review the plan annually. But Lee Gilmore serves on the city board and says if there was a plan in place in this building, apparently few people followed it.
That's inexcusable. There's no reason a building that size with an evacuation plan in place that is enacted should not be emptied virtually in minutes.
Well, Chicago's ordinance was passed in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. Lee Gilmore was in the World Trade Center during the attack on 9/11. She considers it a miracle that she was able to make it out alive. She considers it inexcusable that people were not able to make it out alive of this building tonight. Live in the Loop, John Garcia, ABC 7 News. Ron, Kathy, back to you.
Okay, John, thanks. In its time, 69 West Washington was a model for skyscrapers designed by Chicago architect and engineer Myron Goldsmith.
And then a few years ago, when this building became available, it seemed to solve a lot of problems for Cook County government. ABC 7's Cheryl Burton here with the history of the building and the story about the present owner.
Well, Ron and Kathy, when it was originally constructed, it was considered state-of-the-art skyscraper that changed the face of downtown. It's called the Brunswick Building, and it's located just across the street from Daley Plaza. It stands 35 stories tall after construction was completed back in 1965. It has a unique open floor plan with no supporting columns interrupting the floor space. Now, in 1996, Cook County officials purchased the structure for $40 million. The 65,000 square foot building became vacant when its major tenant, Arthur Anderson, vacated the property. The Secretary of State's office is located on the 12th floor. The driver's, business, and corporate licenses are issued out of this office. Tonight, Secretary of State White surveyed the damage.
We saw a lot of damage, a lot of water damage, a lot of fire damage. We have 40 employees who work in the facility, and we're reasonably sure that all of them got out safely. However, I was told that 11 people had to be taken to the hospital. We wish them well.
Well, Secretary White says this fire will have tremendous impact on delivering services because the records did suffer water and fire damage. But amazingly, he said some of the information was untouched and there are backup records. Now, in the lobby of the building, there is a Citibank branch office, and on the second floor, there is a daycare center. And so far tonight, there have been no reports of injuries involving children. And tonight, Kathy and Ron, someone told ABC 7 News, who called himself a former engineer of the building, he said that a generator for the elevators is also housed on the 12th floor. Not sure if it has anything to do with tonight's fire, but it's some information we wanted to pass along.
All right. Thanks, Cheryl.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox News Saturday.
The city of Chicago is under intense criticism after the high-rise fire that killed 6 people. Investigators are looking for a cause. Families of the victims and survivors are pressing for answers. Could firefighters have done more to save the victims? Why were there no sprinklers on the upper floors? The Cook County Administration fire is first on Fox tonight. Good afternoon. I'm Byron Harlan.
And I'm Danielle Serino in for Nancy Pender. We have team coverage of this deadly blaze, and we begin with Dane Placco at the scene of the fire in the Loop. Dane?
Danielle, 3 of the people who died in that fire in the building yesterday worked for Cook County Public Guardian Patrick Murphy. Today, Patrick Murphy is giving specific details that he says involve 2 encounters his employees had with Chicago fires that he believes could have saved their lives, while the city continues to defend its efforts. Fire investigators from the Bomb and Arson Unit, working with ATF agents, continue to comb through the burned-out shell of the 12th floor, trying to determine how and where the fire started. At the same time, critics continue to question the Chicago Fire Department's handling of yesterday's fire. They killed 6 people and seriously injured at least 7 others.
We responded very quickly with the appropriate manpower. Did some courageous work.
Fire Commissioner James Joyce today defended his department's actions, but Cook County Public Guardian Patrick Murphy, who lost 3 veteran employees in the fire, disagrees.
Whatever happened, it shouldn't have happened.
Murphy says the 3 who died were among a group of 5 employees who descended from an upper floor through the east stairwell when they were stopped by firefighters at the 12th floor and sent back up that stairwell. Murphy says they were unable to get out of the stairwell because most of the doors leading to the floors were locked.
Number 1, common sense. You don't tell people to go up stairwells. You tell them to go down. Number 2, you stay with them to make sure they don't die. But if I were the fire chief, that would be a rule. You find people in the burning building with a lot of smoke, you stay with them. You don't send them off on some wild goose chase.
It is not uncommon for any of the civilians or inhabitants of any of those buildings to have a conversation with any one of the 175 firefighters. Those firefighters continue their assigned duties, attacking the fire, making sure the fire didn't spread.
And in the second incident, Murphy says one of that party of 5 was finally able to find an open door in the stairwell on the 27th floor, went across the building back down the the opposite stairwell, and went immediately to the command vent. She says she told at least 2 or 3 commanders that there were still people left behind trapped in the stairwell on the east side of the building. And according to Patrick Murphy, she was told by those fire officials that they already checked the stairwell, that there was nobody left in the building. The building had been evacuated. That was obviously not the case. Now, ATF agents, as we mentioned before, also involved. They're not talking on camera, but they are telling us that it appears the fire might have started in a utility closet on the 12th floor, and they're looking at wiring and light fixtures at this point. However, they've not ruled out any use of an accelerant at this point. They say they may have some news on that a bit later today. Live downtown, Dane Placco, Fox News, Chicago.
All right, Dane, thank you very much for the report. Dane Placco reported it. 6 people died in the tragedy. Most of them worked in the Cook County Public Guardian's office.
And 8 people remain hospitalized today, some in serious or critical condition. Our John Dempsey is live at Northwestern Hospital with more on the victims of this fire. John.
Danielle, the 2 victims that are still here at Northwestern are said to be doing well. However, 3 people are in critical condition elsewhere. Meanwhile, people who knew those who died in this fire are remembering them fondly.
Well, she was my firstborn.
The mother of Loop fire victim Maureen McDonald, also named Maureen, remembering her daughter as a kind person who was dedicated to family and to her job in the Cook County Public Guardian's office.
Always willing to help anybody. I think she enjoyed life more when she was helping somebody.
The fire also killed 2 of Maureen McDonald's co-workers, 38-year-old attorney Sarah Chapman and 39-year-old John Slater. The other victims include 51-year-old Felice Lishaw, 47-year-old Janet Grant, a lawyer for the County Forest Preserve District, and 51-year-old Teresa Zajac, who worked as a cleaning woman in the building. Her boss remembers Teresa as a dedicated employee.
She was a happy, helpful woman, and she loved her work. She had a family. She was a wonderful lady. She came to work every day, and she was happy about it.
In addition to Maureen McDonald, Sarah Chapman, who lived in this North Side building, and John Slater, who lived a few blocks away, all worked for Cook County Public Guardian Patrick Murphy, who says he is devastated.
Just 3 outstanding human beings, and it's just I don't know how to talk about it any other way.
Now, obviously, that person that we showed there was not John Slater. John Slater passed away in this fire. Getting back to the victims who are still hospitalized, 2 women remain in fair condition here at Northwestern. 2 people are in critical but stable condition at Stroger Hospital on the near west side. A 42-year-old woman and a 47-year-old man are both at Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's. That woman in critical condition, the man upgraded to good condition this afternoon. And there are 2 victims still listed as stable at Mercy Hospital on the near south side. Live at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, John Dempsey, Fox News, Chicago. Back to you in the studio.
All right, John, thank you very much. Yesterday's deadly fire made this point perfectly clear: the need for sprinkler systems in all Chicago high-rise buildings. Lilia Chacon has that part of the story from the newsroom. Lilia.
Byron, firefighters know that sprinklers save lives. That's why all Chicago construction over 8 stories that's been built since 1975 is required to have sprinklers. But critics say that older buildings, including the county building where 6 people died yesterday, don't have them because building management and city leaders put dollars ahead of lives. Cook County Administration building does have some sprinklers on the concourse level and in the basement. Too far from the 12th floor to stop the flames from spreading, and too far to save the lives of desperate people trapped by smoke. What difference would sprinklers have made in this fire?
Well, me and you wouldn't even be talking here today because the fire would have been out in probably a minute or a minute and a half. as soon as the flames reach the ceiling or approximately 150 degrees of temperature.
But because the 35-story county building was put up in 1963, it is not required to have sprinklers on its upper floors. Close to 800 buildings built before 1975 are taller than 8 stories and are not fitted with sprinklers, including as many as 70 city and county buildings. Today, we asked the fire commissioner if it was time to update the fire code.
All protective devices, anything that would make a building safer, will be reviewed.
Specifically sprinklers.
Everything will be reviewed.
But the city has reviewed its fire code several times in the wake of fatal high-rise fires. 4 people died in January 1996 in a fire on South Cottage Grove. In August of that same year, 2 more people died in a fire on the far north side. At that time, Mayor Daley called for older buildings to be retrofitted with sprinklers, but he changed his mind under pressure from the Buildings Owners and Management Association, BOMA for short.
3 times now, Mayor Daley has called for sprinklers to be retrofitted, and 3 times he's backed down.
Fire struck yet again in January 2002, killing a woman in a high-rise apartment fire on the Gold Coast. Fire officials estimate the county building occupies 1 million square feet. What would it cost to retrofit it with sprinklers?
I'm going to say $2 to $2.50 a square foot right now. And I just compare that to the cost of the carpeting that they replace every few years in a building. Same amount of cost, only the sprinklers are going to last 50 years.
Now, the Chicago High-Rise Safety Commission came out with a report in 1999 that found fire deaths in Chicago high-rises are approximately 3.5 times greater than the national average. In the meantime, New York City conducted a similar study and has already begun a 20-year phase-in to put sprinklers in all of its older buildings. Byron, back to you.
Lilia Chacon in the newsroom. Thank you very much, Lilia. City leaders have canceled all of this weekend's Halloween activities and parades at Daley Plaza out of respect for the fire victims. We invite you to stay with Fox News Chicago for continuing coverage of the County Administration Building fire. We'll update this story later in the newscast. We'll be back with extensive coverage on Fox News Chicago after the baseball game.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox News.
Investigators are closing in on the cause of the deadly fire at the Cook County Administration Building. Also, a Chicago alderman says he may propose a law to prevent a similar disaster. That story is first on Fox tonight. Good evening. I'm Byron Harlan.
And I'm Danielle Serino in for Nancy Pender. John Dempsey joins us live from the scene of the fire with the latest on the investigation. Hi, John. What do you have for us?
Well, Danielle, locked doors in high-rise stairways may become a thing of the past in Chicago if one key alderman has his way. Meanwhile, authorities investigating the cause of Friday's deadly fire here downtown are zeroing in on the fire's possible origin. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms now believes a faulty light fixture may have caused the fire that killed 6 people Friday in the County Administration Building. The ATF says it has hired a forensic electrical engineer to inspect the 12th floor storage room where the blaze began. The 6 victims died of smoke inhalation after being trapped in building stairwells where the doors were all locked, a common high-rise security practice in accordance with city law. But that may now change.
My first reaction is that perhaps I should introduce an ordinance preventing the locking of the doors.
City Council Buildings Committee Chairman Bernard Stone says even though building owners want those doors locked to keep out thieves, what happened Friday proves that's a bad idea.
If I have to balance the loss of property, which is basically the reason that they lock the doors, is for security purposes against the loss of life. And in my book, the protection of life is certainly much more important.
The building at 69 West Washington also did not have a sprinkler system that could have put out the fire. And a sprinkler industry spokesman says Alderman Stone and other politicians are to blame for that.
It's politics and it's pressure from the Building Owners and Managers Association against Mayor Daley and the aldermen.
He has a personal interest. I mean, they sell sprinkler systems.
Stone says the cost of mandating sprinklers in pre-1975 buildings would drive building owners out of business. Meanwhile, Cook County State's Attorney Dick Devine, who was in the same stairwell as the people who died, is calling for a thorough investigation to make sure Friday's mistakes are not repeated.
Somewhere, somehow, somebody who should have been thinking about all this wasn't doing it. And I know somebody's going to point here and somebody's going to point there. But for people who are in that stairwell, you know, the bottom line is you got to do something. You got to do it better.
And Dick Devine says he believes one of the key reasons that he is alive today is that somebody up on the 27th floor opened a door to allow him and his co-workers to get out of that stairwell. Both Devine and Bernard Stone say that the key mistake that was made here on Friday was the order from someone connected with building management to tell the people in that building to evacuate. That order sent those victims into that smoky, locked stairway where they were trapped. Live from downtown, John Dempsey, Fox News Chicago. Danielle, back to you.
Thanks so much, John, for your report. Now, 8 people remain hospitalized from the fire. 2 women are at Stroger Hospital in critical condition. 1 woman is in serious condition and another in fair at Rush Presbyterian. At Mercy Hospital, 2 people are in stable condition. And at Northwestern Memorial, 1 woman is in fair condition, another in good condition. The Cook County Administrative Building will be closed for business tomorrow. Employees have been contacted over the weekend regarding their work assignments. Any county employees with job-related questions can contact their supervisors during regular business hours starting tomorrow morning. And we invite you to stay with Fox News Chicago for continuing coverage of the county building fire. Our reports resume tomorrow morning on Fox News beginning at 5.
Now, the news on CBS 2.
So many questions are still on the table in the wake of that deadly high-rise fire in the Loop. For instance, was the county administration building in violation of any city codes? And if not, do the building codes need to be stronger? Good evening, I'm Diane Burns.
And I'm Antonio Mora. 6 people are dead, 8 others are still being treated following last Friday's fire. Now the focus is on what went wrong and how can future tragedies be prevented. CBS 2 investigative reporter Pam Zeckman joins us now with a closer look at the building codes. And Pam, so many questions.
There really are, Antonio and Diane. City officials have insisted that the county office building was in compliance with all building and fire codes. But now there are questions being raised about that and more calls to change the codes to prevent another tragedy. There were no sprinklers on the upper floors of the county administration building to help put out the fire because city officials say they were not required. The 35-story high-rise was built in 1964 and purchased by the county in 1996. Like 800 other city high-rises, it was grandfathered in and not mandated to meet the same fire safety codes for new construction.
The building met the fire code and building codes.
Now, the head of the Northern Illinois Fire Sprinkler Advisory Board is challenging that claim.
There is a question about what happened when the building was renovated. Was it renovated more than 50% of the total? If so, it should have had sprinklers installed at that time.
And he says now it would be relatively simple to install sprinklers on all 35 floors and estimated it would cost $2 a square foot, not exorbitant by most estimates.
This building over here has a connection to the underground hydrant system. It has a fire pump. It has a standby system that the firemen use to fight the fire with. All you simply have to do now is get the sprinklers put on each floor.
The 6 people who died Friday were trapped in the building's smoke-filled stairwells because once again, the building was grandfathered in and not required to meet current fire safety codes for stairwells in new high-rises. The code requires that stairwells have vestibules that trap smoke before it gets in, or enough air pressure so smoke that does get in is pushed out, and doors that automatically unlock from a central command switch so people trapped in a smoke-filled stairwell can get out.
But with a smoke-proof enclosure, as well as the doors that are not subject to locking or that can be unlocked, what you have is the capability for the people to get out of the building.
City officials were not immediately available to comment about the differences between the international standard and the city's code, but they are saying that all aspects of this fire tragedy are being studied and changes may be made to prevent yet another disaster like this one. Antonio and Diane?
Pam, what have other big cities done?
They have, as we understand it, retrofitted some of these older buildings. Some cities have done that. Chicago has not.
Thank you, Pam.
Well, Mayor Daley says it's up to city officials to determine whether building codes ought to be changed, including having evacuation plans on file for all buildings similar to the county administration building. The mayor also admitted that there was a less than perfect response to the fire and that no one is off the hook in the blame game.
When you have someone who is dead today and someone who's hospitalized, you cannot say everyone has done their job 100%. There's no way. You cannot say that.
Well, the mayor said the city would cooperate with any outside investigations of the fire.
A memorial of flowers and other mementos is growing at the scene of the fire. Meanwhile, the first funeral for one of the victims was held today at St. Constance Church in the Jefferson Park neighborhood. Teresa Zajac worked as a cleaning lady at the county administration building. Friends and family gathered to say goodbye to her today. CBS News' Mike Parker is live in the loop with more on the emotional aftermath to the fire. Mike, what's the mood there today?
It's an incredible feeling to talk with people who knew the victims of this fire on Friday. In fact, as you know, many questions have been raised now about how the city and other authorities handled the fire and the evacuation. As we heard today, many of those questions are coming from people who knew the victims well. People have been coming to a sidewalk memorial to the 6 victims who died when they were trapped in a smoky stairwell in the county administration building. There are 6 white crosses, and there are pictures of those who died and notes from their friends. A message for Sarah Chapman describes her as the devoted owner of Roxy and says you will be missed by your dog-walking buddies. These women, obviously touched, came to remember Public Guardian Office paralegal Maureen McDonald.
Her mother was always doing something for my mom, raising kids alone, and Maureen was like that. Help this little girl over here get a job. She heard someone needed a job in my family, and she did help them get a job in this building.
So she was quite a lady.
She was such a good Catholic and wonderful, just a real lady.
Another of McDonald's neighbors is angry and frustrated.
I don't understand why they never had water sprinklers in the building. Now, I know they said that it was built in a certain time, but it shouldn't matter. They should have water sprinklers in every building down here.
A friend of another victim, Janet Grant, is not blaming anyone for the tragedy.
It was an accident. It was a fire. So I can't cast blame. I feel sorry for her loss. I feel sorry for her mom. I'm sorry for her daughter, but I can't cast blame. I wasn't there. You have to be in that person's, have to be there. I can't say what they should have done.
Those 6 white crosses were put into place by suburban carpenter Greg Zanis. He says he did it to tell the victim's family that the whole community cares. Antonio, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Parker in the loop. Stay tuned to CBS 2 News for continuing coverage of the deadly high-rise fire. At 6, what it means for people who need to do business in that building. And just a reminder, you can log on to CBS2Chicago.com around the clock for the latest information on the fire.
Live from Chicago's NBC5, this is NBC5 News at 6.
What would you do if fire erupted in a high-rise you work or live in? Friday's Target 5 is prompting questions about the safety of other Chicago high-rises. NBC5's Charlie Wojciechowski now joins us live with some startling statistics. Charlie.
Warner, about 4 years ago, a commission took on the issue of high-rise safety. Their conclusion that buildings, even those built before 1975, should have sprinklers. And here are the reasons why. They said Chicago's death rate in high-rise fires is 3.5 that of the rest of the nation, 3.5 times that of the rest of the nation. And 91% of those buildings are non-sprinkler. In Chicago, there are 800 to 1,000 such buildings. A shard of glass charred black on one side by a fire safety experts say never should have been allowed to burn the way it did.
Sprinklers would have stopped this fire in probably 1 minute or 2 minutes. Nobody would have needed to be evacuated. There would have been no concerns about the locks on the stairwells.
Sprinkler advocate Tom Leah points to a 1999 high-rise fire safety study that says Chicago's death rate is 3.5 times the national average.
Well, you'll still have a fire, but the fires will be put out 96% of the time if you have a fire sprinkler system in it.
But building owners and managers say the cost of retrofitting an older building with sprinklers is prohibitively expensive. An estimate ranges anywhere from $1.75 to $4.75 per square foot, and that doesn't include things like asbestos abatement. Many old and new high-rises, like the Aon building, the City Corp Center, and 311 South Wacker depend on detailed disaster plans for tenant safety. This Virginia Beach firm specializes in developing such plans, many of which include an evacuation plan. When fire raced through the Cook County Administration Building, confusion over evacuation and locked stairways may have caused some of the fatalities.
What caused the deaths last Friday evening was whoever told those people to evacuate. They should have stayed where they were in the building.
Alderman Bernard Stone says he is proposing an ordinance that would require buildings to unlock stairway doors in the event of fire. Currently, Chicago code only requires signs like this one near the fire stairway door, telling people they won't be able to exit until they get all the way down to the first floor.
Got to get those doors unlocked.
To do that, Stone says all the doors should be unlocked all the time, or an electronic system should be installed at the security desk of each building. In the event of fire, he says, a simple button could unlock all the doors and let everyone exit to safety. He says that would be the most cost-effective solution to this kind of problem. Reporting live at the corner of 69th and Washington, or excuse me, 69 West Washington, Charlie Wojciechowski, NBC 5 News.
All right, thank you, Charlie. And this story leads us to the results of tonight's NBC 5 Daily Herald web question. Should high-rise buildings be allowed to keep internal doors locked for safety reasons? Now, most of you, 80% tonight, say no. Thank you for taking part in our unscientific survey.
Live from WTTW 11, this is Chicago Tonight. Here's Bob Surratt.
But first, the question on many people's minds tonight is, what exactly should you do in a high-rise fire? What precautions should be taken? Elizabeth Brackett joins us now with more on that. Elizabeth?
Well, Bob, you know, there's a great deal of conflicting information about what to do if you're caught in a high-rise fire. What is known is that if the 6 victims had not tried to get out of the building, they may have lived, as the deadly smoke did not seep into the other floors in the building. So what should you do?
If it's in a high-rise and it's all residential, you are better off for most emergencies with fire to stay put. The walls and the doors have a fire rating. There are some procedures you can take. Wetting a towel, blocking the bottom of the door. Don't open up the window to create a draft to suck the smoke into your apartment. Most of the time, that will save your life. Because in most cases, there's going to be enough of a rescue effort that we're going to be able to get the fire out, because it is the smoke that is the real problem. Unfortunately, how will you know when you've gone beyond that point of no return? And there is no good way. That's why it's not a perfect system.
Elizabeth, are there conflicting reports at all about what exactly the people in the building were told on Friday?
Well, we do know that there were evacuation orders apparently issued by the building and not by the fire department. And then there's a question around what happened when the people went down the stairs and what did the firemen tell them. The fire department says that's exactly what they're investigating. They say we want the answers to the questions, you know, just as much as everybody else does. They're conducting an investigation. They say they may have some answers by this Friday. But it's kind of reminiscent of what happened 16 years ago. Do you remember when Nancy Clay was caught in one Illinois center, and she called 911, and she called 911, and she had her exact location, but the firemen could never find her?
Well, that was the issue of the vanity addresses, right?
Right, and that was changed, but as a result of that and the litigation and the settlement in that case, the fire department was supposed to relook at all their communication systems. And today when I talked to the attorney who handled the case, Bob Clifford, he wonders how much has changed since the Clay case.
My main concern is communication, that it is very clear that the fire department was unaware of the presence of these citizens in that stairwell. That can't stand. How can that be? So, you know, there should be an immediate effort made to make certain that exits are open and available to people in high-rise buildings, and it ought not wait for some alleged blue ribbon commission to tell us that that is so. We know it right now.
So as far as sprinklers go, as I understand it now, there were none in this building, and that is perfectly legal.
It's perfectly legal. You can have, there are about 800 high-rises, as a matter of fact, in the city who don't have sprinklers. That's because they were built before 1975, so they were grandfathered in. But there is a great deal of concern about that. We just heard Alderman Stone say he didn't think the sprinklers would have made much difference. But there are many other people who disagree with them. As a matter of fact, Chicago's death rate is 3.5 times higher than the national average. And people say primarily it's because our buildings aren't sprinkled. That very day, the General Services Administration building right down the street, another government building, had a fire on Friday afternoon. But we barely heard about it because that building had sprinklers. So there have been numerous reports saying that there should be sprinklers. There was a Tri-Data Commission report. There was another High-Rise Fire Safety Commission report in 1999, all saying that these buildings should be sprinklered. And as a matter of fact, Mayor Daley has called for sprinklers in the past.
Mayor Daley, in his heart, he knows what has to be done. In the Paxton Hotel fire in 1992, he called for fire sprinklers. And the fire at 6007 North Sheridan, 1999, he called for fire sprinklers. And just recently at 260 East Chestnut in the Streeterville area, 8 firemen were burned in a flashover, and another person was killed. Each time he called for sprinklers, but each time there was a back-off because of pressure from the Building Owners and Managers Association.
So what Leah and some others say is the best way to stay safe in a high-rise fire is to make sure you live in a building that has sprinklers.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And we have more on our website.
Live from Chicago's NBC5, this is NBC5 News at 5.
She was trapped in a stairwell of the deadly loop fire, but she somehow survived, barely clinging to life. Now a lawyer for one of the victims heads to court. Good evening to you. I'm Marion Brooks.
And I'm Don Lemon. Thanks for joining us, everyone. 4 days after the deadly loop fire and the lawsuits began, now the courts will decide, deciding who's at fault and who should pay. One lawsuit is targeting a loophole in the city's fire code. NBC5's Charlie Wojciechowski is live in the control room with the story. Charlie.
Don, 2 lawsuits filed this afternoon, one on behalf of 51-year-old Felice Litcha, who died in Friday's blaze. The second on behalf of 55-year-old Christine Konopka, who suffered severe smoke inhalation after being trapped in a stairwell. These suits and one about to be filed raise new questions about safety procedures and whether or not this building should have had sprinklers after all. This afternoon, as crews examine the damage left by Friday's fatal fire, attorneys for the victims are filing suit to get their own look at the building and what may have caused the 6 deaths.
We will allege common law negligence for failure to have a proper fire evacuation and safety process. And we'll
Michael
also
Coten's suit on behalf of an as-of-yet unnamed plaintiff will also allege that this building was in violation of a new revision to the Illinois Administrative Code that requires even older structures to retrofit sprinklers in a period of 12 years or less.
Our belief is that if it's a safety-related statute and it's on the books, why wait 12 years to retrofit your building?
The county spent $40 million when it purchased this building from Arthur Anderson in 1996. Since then, it spent another $20 million on renovations, with another $22 million set aside for future projects. None of that yet earmarked for additional sprinklers or automatic locks. Already, sprinklers have been fitted to the basement and mezzanine levels, and one expert says that is more than 1/3 of the work necessary to do the whole building.
Right now, the building that's across the street already has the infrastructure in place. It has an underground. It has a fire pump. It has a standpipe. Everything's there.
69 West Washington has the underground hydrant connection, a fire pump to move the water up into the standpipes, which carry it up to the building's 35 floors. All that's needed, the Northern Illinois Fire Sprinkler Association says, are the branch lines, which would carry the water out to the individual sprinkler heads. The cost, they say, should not be an issue.
But right now, if you look at it, I would go with the $1.80 to $2 a square foot, which again, I'm still going to say is less than the cost of the carpeting, which they change in there every 5 years maybe.
Neither the police, the fire department, nor the city is named in these suits. A spokesman for the city's law department says attorneys there are checking to see if Chicago is exempt from the Illinois Administrative Code requirement because of its home rule powers. Live in B Control, Charlie Wojciechowski, NBC5 News.
Charlie, thank you for your report.
Live from Chicago's NBC5, this is NBC5 News at 10.
Tonight, family and friends mourn another victim of the Loop high-rise fire. John Slater worked in the public guardian's office. His wake is being held tonight, and his funeral is set for tomorrow morning. Other services were held today for 2 of his co-workers, Sarah Chapman and Maureen McDonald. And tonight, fire investigators focus on a 90-minute gap. That's how long it took firefighters to find trapped people in the smoke-filled stairwells. NBC5's Marion Brooks has more on the unanswered questions. Marion.
Questions about a gap of time. Sources tell NBC5 a call went out from someone trapped in a stairwell at 5:20, but fire officials didn't get to them until 6:50, 90 minutes later. 6 died there. And there are other questions about locked doors on the stairwells. County Commissioner Carl Hansen has been trying to see that change in county buildings for 8 years.
I'm terribly sorry that we didn't correct it. We now have 6 people dead.
Other questions about a lack of sprinkler system. Should the building have had one? A lawyer suing on behalf of victim Felice Leachaw says a revision in Illinois Administrative Code calls for older buildings to retrofit in 12 years or less.
It's a safety-related statute, and it's on the books. Why wait 12 years to retrofit your building?
And it turns out the infrastructure for such a system was in place. All that's needed, according to one expert, was branch lines. The cost?
I would go with the $1.80 to $2 a square foot, which again, I'm still going to say is less than the cost of the carpeting, which they change in there every 5 years maybe.
All questions also raised in another lawsuit filed today, this one on behalf of Christine Konopka, a fire safety coordinator following evacuation instructions. She got trapped in a stairwell and was lucky to survive.
We told the stairwell that the stairwell was the dangerous place to go. And obviously people died and people were injured like her because of that.
The lawsuits at this point name only the 2 building management companies as defendants, but others will likely be added. Attorneys go before a judge tomorrow to request evacuation plans for the building, all 911 and emergency communication tapes, and access to the building for independent inspection. And on top of that, today board president John Strozier promised a non-political panel to investigate the fire and its aftermath. Allison?
Thanks, Marion.
Live from CBS 2, Antonio Mora, Diane Burns, Steve Baskerville with weather, and Mike Adamley on sports. This is CBS 2 News at 6.
As family and friends mourn the loss of loved ones, behind the scenes, a battle is raging over the best way to prevent such a needless tragedy from ever happening again. CBS 2's Mike Flannery joins us to talk about the fight over fire sprinklers. And Mike, you got a dramatic demonstration of the power that they have to save lives.
Antonio, it's a demonstration that was put on at the request of CBS 2 News by a South Suburban Fire Department and the sprinkler industry. That is the beep of a smoke detector in an office similar to ones at 69 West Washington. With units of the Alsip Fire Department standing by, a flare is used to ignite a corner of the drapery. In just 90 seconds, the temperature inside reaches 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit.
This could have been what the firemen encountered when they opened up the stairway door at the high-rise fire at 69 West Washington.
After extinguishing that blaze, the scenario is repeated. But this time, the simulated office is equipped with fire-suppressing sprinklers. Supporters say sprinklers could have saved the 6 lives lost in the Loop fire. It began in a state-rented storage room.
If this was the Secretary of State's office building with the storage material, that's what they'd be doing right now. Breaking it apart, putting it out with a little pump can.
Unmoved by such demonstrations is the official spokesman for the owners of Chicago's older high-rises, owners who claim they would have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to retrofit their structures with sprinklers.
We encourage their installation, but we simply do not believe that it's appropriate for a variety of reasons to require their retrofit into every older building in Chicago that doesn't already have them.
And this is not a small problem. Experts estimate that Chicago has perhaps 800 high-rises without sprinklers, about 40 of those buildings in and around the Loop. The Building Owners and Managers Association indicates that its members might be willing to go along with a requirement to automatically unlock stairwell doors in an emergency and to install systems that would tend to keep stairwells free from the deadly fumes and smoke that killed those people at 69 West Washington. Had 69 West Washington been equipped with those 2 systems, the 6 dead might also still be alive, Antonio.
This will be a long fight, I suspect, Mike. Thank you, Mike Flannery, in the control room.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox News at 9.
Thank you for joining us for this Fox News special on the county building fire. I'm Walter Jacobson.
And I'm Robin Robbins, and it was exactly 2 weeks ago tonight that we were reporting on the tragedy, the deaths of 6 people in a fire at the Cook County Administration Building in Chicago's Loop. The fire produced a lot of flames, a lot of smoke, and in the wake of those 6 deaths, it's also produced a lot of questions and a lot of finger-pointing. Over the next half hour, we will talk about the issues raised by the fire and the response by the Chicago Fire Department. We'll also take a closer look at the politically connected man whose company helps manage the county building, and we'll talk to one county official who lost 3 co-workers in that blaze.
We begin with what for many of us is a first look inside the 12th floor of the county building since the fire. Last week, attorneys for victims and other families toured the building and captured what they saw on film and videotape. Those images were released today, and they are powerful testaments to the destructive nature of that fire. The attorneys say the images may also hold the key to what went wrong on the evening of October 17.
This is the 12th floor, the fire floor. This is the room itself where the fire is. We're looking north at the moment, and we're panning around the room. And there's the storage closet right there. The storage closet, which is alleged to be the fire origin. And now we're looking at some of the office cubicles. And you can see that all the ceiling tiles, of course, have burned. You see the piping and conduit that's been revealed by the fire. Flames typically have a temperature of about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, whether it's a match or a conflagration. You can see the stacks of paper here. There's significantly charged stacks of paper. This is all inside the storage closet itself. The closet measures about 6 feet by 18 feet. There's the emergency phone on the 25th floor. There are phones on every 5th floor.
One thing I might comment about this, it tells you to go to the stairwell. It doesn't tell you you're going to be locked in once you're in there.
Today's release of those images is the latest development in an event that has captured our attention for 2 solid weeks.
Our Lilia Chacon is now live at 69 West Washington with a look back at the fire and the investigation.
Walter, in the 2 weeks since this tragedy, investigators have started to piece together a clearer picture of just what went wrong in those frantic minutes after a fire broke out at 69 West Washington. Veteran firefighters called it the worst high-rise fire in memory.
Get the fire, we can't get out. We're in the stairwell.
What floor are you on?
23, we're going up, the doors can't open.
A roaring, vicious conflagration that investigators believe started in a lighting fixture inside a 12th floor closet.
Like I said, a fire with an attitude, a living hell. My Hail Marys turned into holy cows that day.
But a bad situation appears to have been made worse by a series of mistakes that left 6 people trapped and dying in a smoke-filled stairwell.
I wish I could stand here and tell you that every aspect of this event went the way we would have liked. That's simply not the case, ladies and gentlemen.
Three of the 6 people who died worked for public guardian Patrick Murphy. Among those who narrowly escaped through an unlocked door, state's attorney Dick Devine.
As long as I'm around, I'm not going to sit still until we come up with some answers that mean something here.
A high-rise fire presents firefighters with a complex series of problems. Chief among them, how to get water on a fire that's raging more than 100 feet above street level, and how to keep occupants safe while doing it.
Oh, God, hurry. We'll die.
Okay, is everybody conscious right now?
I don't know.
But the stage for tragedy was set long before the first call to 911, when the county board purchased the building in 1994. Officials declined to retrofit the 1963 building with sprinklers or with an override for locking doors on stairwells. Chicago building codes do not require the fire safety upgrades on buildings put up before 1975.
3 times now, Mayor Daley has called for sprinklers to be retrofitted, and 3 times he's backed down.
Without sprinklers to squelch flames, the fire spread quickly through the 12th floor offices of the Secretary of State. Shortly after 5 p.m., office workers heard a panicky female voice on the building intercom telling them to evacuate the 12th floor. Moments later, the same voice ordered the building completely evacuated by means of the stairs, not the elevators.
Well, the fire department did not order an evacuation of that building.
Investigators want to know why emergency response was being commandeered by a security guard and not fire personnel, a violation of the fire department's own general orders.
Who was in charge that day? Who gave the evacuation order and who allowed it? And if it was the building or the management or the building engineer, why was the building engineer allowed to order an evacuation of the building when the fire department was on the scene?
That female voice is believed to belong to an Argus security guard, a company listed on multiple lawsuits filed by victims. Also listed, Building Management, the politically connected Eastlake and U.S. Equities companies owned by Elsie Higginbottom. Critics feared a whitewash by city and county agencies, which were essentially put in charge of finding themselves liable. After several days of declining to call for independent investigators, both the governor and the president of the county board decided to put together teams. Former FEMA head Jamie Lee Witt is heading the governor's team. Former Judge Abner Mikva is heading the county's team.
Hello, Jamie. How you doing?
Team members have conducted a preliminary inspection of the scene. They promise to make the best of the hard lessons learned here.
We intend to have public hearings. We intend to have witnesses to describe both what happened and what they think are cures and solutions to see that it doesn't happen again.
Now, substantial changes to the city's building and fire codes are already under consideration, including mandating sprinklers in all high-rises and finding a way to unlock these stairwell doors in the event of an emergency. Live here near 69 West Washington, Lilia Chacon, Fox News, Chicago.
Hey, Lil, thanks for that report. One of the managing partners of the county building is Elsie Higginbottom. Tonight, we look further into his company's properties and find a list of fire code violations. Mark Sapels has been investigating. He joins us now with more of his exclusive one-on-one interview with Higginbottom. Mark.
Robin Walter, 13 dead in 4 fires since 1996 in buildings connected to Higginbottom, including this month's fire at the county building. As we dug further, we found the city has sued him or his company several dozen times since 1987. All for fire code violations described to us as serious. Tonight, he sat down to answer our questions.
Talking about over 100 properties. There isn't a property in the city of Chicago that you can't go into and find some sort of defect if you're looking at it.
We pulled nearly 50 housing court cases naming Eastlake Management or Elsie Higginbottom as defendants. Almost half of those cases, 27 in all, mentioned dangerous and hazardous fire safety problems.
We are doing an adequate job of looking to see whether or not the devices that we have in the units are functioning properly.
City building inspectors found exits locked shut or blocked by debris, stairwells without emergency lights or fire hoses, everything from rusty fire department connections to missing smoke detectors. Experts assure us these were critical life safety violations. Rescuers climb flights of stairs with heavy equipment and need working standpipes with hoses if they are to save lives.
2907 South Wabash. That building is not a building that requires a fire pump, and it's not a building that in which we have any sprinklers or a fire pump there.
And why did the city sue you then?
Well, I mean, I don't know why the city sued us.
The fire inspectors for the city didn't know that, were way off base, and they took you to court to sue you all the way to that process, that step, and it was something that you didn't even need, period?
Well, that's exactly right. We can only respond to you and say, whenever we're faced with these kinds of issues, we address them professionally.
City officials tell us Eastlake Management does show up in housing court, generally makes requested repairs, and allows city inspectors follow-up visits. But should it get that far? By the time it gets to this, you've been warned several times. The building has been warned several times.
No, we corrected it when we found out about it.
Higginbottom also told us the company inherited many of these code violations.
manage a lot of properties that are in high-risk neighborhoods and challenging properties, and that this company does a good job at property management, contrary to what you would like to say or some of our detractors would like to say.
So if these buildings already had problems when Higginbottom took over, why did we find so many similarities in the violations themselves? For example, 3 Eastlake buildings were all cited for illegal plumbing, which supplied kitchen sinks with water intended for fire sprinklers. Sprinklers were missing from garbage chutes and trash rooms in 4 buildings. In others, they were painted over, broken, or not installed, as you can see in these evidence photos. This fire on South Cottage Grove killed 4 and injured 50. Tony Smith's mother and brother were among the victims. Higginbottom's insurance company settled their lawsuit for $8 million. But the family's attorney still insists that blaze was entirely preventable.
The management company and Mr. Higginbottom himself were notified on a number of occasions about fire code violations. When you look at the facts that exist in that particular case, you have to wonder, why was a management company like this entrusted with the management of a county building? I simply can't understand.
Despite his reputation as Mayor Daley's Southside fundraiser, Higginbottom tonight denied having any political clout.
How am I well connected? How am I any better connected than anyone else in the city of Chicago?
Higginbottom also insisted to me today that his buildings are safe and that he would never knowingly put people in jeopardy. He also wondered why the fire has brought so much attention on him. After all, Walter and Robin, he says he doesn't own the county building. He manages the property with another company. And he also begged to differ with me on when I held up the sheet and said, when you get to this point in building court and they're suing you, you've had 3 or 4 warnings. He said, no, that's not always the case. His attorney said that's not always the case. So that was a big point of contention during the interview as well.
Well, I'm sure you'll be checking that out. Thanks, Mark.